Live from the David Land Studios in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is a breaking news report. This is a bathrobe video. Texas Motor Speedway. The time, it appears, has come. Texas Motor Speedway appears to be getting the Dozer. A reconfiguration has been rumored online and seemingly backed up by a change in the NASCAR Cup Series date. And what that may also mean is a change in the IndyCar schedule, meaning the long marriage since 1997 of IndyCar and Texas Motor Speedway might be coming to an end. This comes from Crash Gladys, who is a host on the Speed Freaks podcast, something that's been around seemingly since the dawn of time. But they have gotten to this first, and this is what Crash had to say. Well, that was a bit of a bomb drop. Kenny Sargent laying it out there after next year. Texas Motor Speedway is set to blow up and reconfigure to help make the product better. Then he added that IndyCar may or may not be a part of the picture moving forward too. Wait, what? Yes, that is definitely my reaction as well, and it's backed up, this report, by seemingly some websites, including Texas Motor Speedway's own website, which has shown off that the Texas Spring NASCAR race, apparently, number one, is not the All-Star race. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the purported date is April 23rd, 2023. And they say it's a star-studded event that's part competition, part carnival. Now, does that 100% say that it's not the All-Star race? No. But there have been several reports going around the interwebs, which I think have come from fairly reliable sources, that have said essentially Fox Sports wants the All-Star race anywhere but Texas Motor Speedway. So that date change would certainly indicate that the All-Star race is no longer at Texas Motor Speedway. Now, where could it be? Well, again, if you believe the TV report, it's going to be anywhere but Texas Motor Speedway. But the interesting part about all of this has been the fact that Texas Motor Speedway, after next year, which I assume is 2023, Texas Motor Speedway is going to get the Dozer and be reconfigured into something else to make the product better. Now, what could that possibly be? And if IndyCar may or may not be a part of that picture, what are we talking here? So there's a couple of possibilities that I kind of see. Number one, I would think that at least for next year, IndyCar will return to Texas Motor Speedway. Now, given that NASCAR is going to be in the April 23rd slot, and the IndyCar race is going to take place, or took place last year, I believe in early April. It took place around Sebring. I apologize that I don't know the specific date, because I didn't sleep very well the night before, because I was coming from the 12 hours of Sebring, 2-hour flight to Texas Motor Speedway to cover that race. So apologies if I don't remember the exact date, but it would seem a bit strange to have two major events in April. Now, what you could potentially do, I guess, if you want to have both of those events in April, would be to have a doubleheader. But I just have a feeling that you know, IndyCar and NASCAR, they're never going to do a doubleheader at an oval. And we're lucky that we even have one doubleheader where IndyCar is very clearly the second fiddle, and they're pushed into a little corner, and then they race in the morning, and then it's all NASCAR from there. They'll never go head-to-head on an oval. You'll never see that. So I don't suspect that's going to be the case. So if IndyCar is going to race at Texas next year, I would expect some sort of a date change. Now, where could that date end up being? Will it be later in the season? Will it be in the summer? Date equity is something we talk about, it seems like, absolutely constantly. And, you know, for an event that's kind of hanging on by a string right now at Texas Motor Speedway, I question whether or not Texas will have a future with IndyCar past 2023, just based on the fact that they're going to probably have to change the date again. The second thing I'm thinking about is this. What does that reconfiguration for Texas Motor Speedway mean? Does it mean they're turning it into a short track like Fontana is becoming? Are they going to turn it into a super speedway, a NASCAR super speedway, like Atlanta has become? Because both of those options would be essentially incompatible with Indy cars. I mean, I guess you could run the Texas Motor Speedway Roval, that is a possibility, but at a track that is traditionally one of the fastest and most dangerous tracks on the IndyCar calendar anyway. In fact, at one point it was so fast that the drivers were literally blacking out and they had to cancel the event. Look up that at some point. Maybe I'll do a video on it if Texas Motor Speedway is indeed going the way of the dodo. I mean, I could see if they put the track back the way it used to be, I don't see a reason why IndyCar couldn't go back there. They put on decent shows, or really great shows at times, on the old configuration. In fact, really, you know, this year I thought they did an admirable job given the PJ1 stained surface and the differences in grip in the high and low groups. Some of those drivers figured it out. Jimmy Johnson is a great example, one of those drivers who loves to change his lane on ovals and try to find all that grip. We saw that at Iowa, we saw that at Texas as well. So I hope, at the very least, if IndyCar and Texas Motor Speedway are not going to continue past 2023, I would at least hope that they have a send-off race in 2023, even if it's at a bad date. They could Fontana it, you know, and they could put it in the middle of the summer and at noon, and just ironically, I'm going to complain about a noon start here because if it's 100 degrees in Texas, ain't nobody going to show up in the grandstands or buy a ticket to that race. So it's tenuous at best with Texas Motor Speedway here and IndyCar, because my suspicion is if they're going to reconfigure the track, they're going to almost certainly reconfigure it specifically tailored to NASCAR. And what are the two things that NASCAR fans want to see? Truly want to see, not what NASCAR thinks they want to see, which is road racing. What NASCAR fans tune in for are bull rings, where the guys will just wreck absolutely constantly, but not wreck absolutely constantly and also be a road course. That's a very important distinction. And a super speedway where they'll go real fast, they'll be in a pack all the time, and they'll wreck constantly. You may see a pattern developing. It's fine if they wreck constantly as long as it's not a road course. So, yeah, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this is what is very, very curious to me. I think everybody saw that Texas Motor Speedway needed to change, including the management team. What the change is going to be a huge story, enormous story, because it could make or break Texas Motor Speedway. That's the other thing to kind of think about. I think some people have kind of brought up the possibility that North Wilkesboro at some point could replace Texas Motor Speedway. Well, what if they just copy North Wilkesboro in Texas? And if whatever reconfiguration of Texas isn't successful and doesn't put on a good show and isn't compatible with NASCAR Cup Series cars, this could be curtains, because whatever this is going to be, even if it's just putting the track back the way it was, is going to be a tremendous investment from Texas Motor Speedway. It's going to be a tremendous amount of manpower to get it done, and it could potentially cost them an event in IndyCar. Now, do they break even on an IndyCar event? I assume they do, otherwise they wouldn't put it on, but that's not, 100% confirmed. When they were getting 100,000 people to show up at Texas for IndyCar, yeah, they were breaking even. When they're getting 20, 30,000 on a good day for IndyCar, are they breaking even? Hard to say. So maybe that's ultimately what they're going to do, is just say, the IndyCar event doesn't make enough money, we don't get enough ticket sales out of it, we're going to cut it. Which would be a shame, because like many have pointed out, that ultimately what you come down to is if Texas Motor Speedway leaves the IndyCar calendar, you're down to 3 oval events. You've got Indianapolis, obviously, the Indy 500. You've got Gateway, and you've got Iowa. Now, those are 3 great oval events, and it would seem as though each of those oval events gets a decent enough crowd to keep people around. And certainly, in the case of Iowa and Gateway, you have 2 very heavily invested promoters who want to see the stands full and people show up and buy tickets and buy merchandise and buy hot dogs. But past that, does IndyCar self-promote a Milwaukee race? Everybody's talking about Milwaukee. except for IndyCar themselves. So, it's like, no matter how much we want it to happen, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Again, they're bulldozing Fontana, so there's a track that IndyCar would be compatible with if they could go back there, but they're not going to be able to anymore because it's going to be a short track. There's Michigan. Why has no one called Michigan yet? I don't know, but and at the end of the day, we got to show up to the oval events. And I want to do that with my channel. I want to support the oval events as best I can and make a big show out of them and talk about how great they are. But at the end of the day, if people aren't buying tickets, people aren't going to show up to the oval races. So if Michigan or Milwaukee or whatever comes back, I'm going to throw my full support behind it, but you guys have to too. So, this last year at Texas, if there is a last year, if this year was the last year, well then it's too late. We lost Texas. And so, yeah, man, this is an interesting thing that's developing here, and I think we're going to learn quite a bit more in the coming days, especially now that there's a date, there's a NASCAR date, and typically this is around the time we get the IndyCar and NASCAR schedules, so I would assume that we're pretty close in finding out exactly what is going to fall where on the schedule, and I will be there to cover it. So thank you guys so much for watching this Red Alert bathrobe video, and I will see you for the rest of the week for more content. There's a lot coming.